Alright, I'm going to choose to do option 3, which is comparing one of the novels we read, As I Lay Dying, or 1984, to a book or movie. But I'm going to do As I Lay Dying compared to House of the Rising Sun, which is a song by the Animals. The first stanza reads, "There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy, and God, I know I'm one." So this pretty much sets the setting of Yoknapatawpha County, Mississippi. The rising sun symbolizes Addie's death, because in Chapter 10, Darrell states, "The sun, an hour above the horizon, is poised like a bloody egg upon a crest of thunderheads." So the sunrise symbolizes the death as Addie dies in the following chapter, Darrell narrates. So we see the House of the Rising Sun as a symbol for Addie and her death, which goes on through the whole novel, and it's the title of the song. The second stanza reads, "My mother was a tailor, she sewed my new blue jeans." And we can say that this was narrated by Jewel, as he is Addie's favorite child and she would reasonably make him a pair of jeans. This shows Addie as a hard-working, diligent Southern mother. The next two lines, "My father was a gambling man down in New Orleans," basically characterize Ants a little bit. They characterize him as being unprepared and lazy, especially in the trip when he gambles with the trip to Jefferson, as he relies on others for food and housing. He also gambles with the routes, as he fails to even look at them ahead of time. And he doesn't even heed the warning of anyone else when they say, "Hey, the bridge is down," and then he has to go through the water or go all the way around and make the journey even longer. The third stanza reads, "Now the only thing a gambler needs is a suitcase and a trunk, and the only time he's satisfied is when he's on a drunk." So this goes back to Ant's gambling with the trip in terms of preparedness. Suitcase and a trunk can symbolize the wagon and the coffin, which are the only two things that Ant even thinks to bring about on the trip to Jefferson. The line "on a drunk" can refer to Ant's unusual pride whenever he does something selfish at the expense of others, like selling Jewel's horse to Snopes or getting the teeth at the end of the novel. Armstead and Cash both comment on this unusual sense of pride by saying he looks hangdog. Armstead says, "He looked kind of funny. Kind of more hangdog than common, and kind of proud too, like he had done something he thought was cute, but wasn't so sure how other folks would take it." So Ants may not be an alcoholic in terms of liquor, but his satisfaction with being greedy and selfish by hurting others shows his inebriation in self-centeredness. Stanza 4 says, "O mother, tell your children not to do what I have done." We can interpret this as Dewey Dell narrating this to Addie regarding her pregnancy and her relations with Leif. She has pretty much the same view as Addie on childbirth, which is that neither of them really want children at all, and this can be shown in Chapter 40 when Addie states that she thinks that the children and Ants have violated her aloneness. The second part of this is "Spend your lives in sin and misery in the house of the rising sun." We can say that Darrell is narrating this because he's the first one who talked about the rising sun, and also we can say that he's condemning his parents, Ants and Addie, for their sins and misery, which influenced their kids to be sinful and miserable as well. So Addie's sin would have to be lust because she had an affair with Whitfield, and then had Jewel. Ants' sin is sloth and greed. He's really lazy, he says he doesn't sweat, and he's really greedy about getting those teeth. Darrell's sin is envy, as he's very jealous of Jewel and competes with him for Addie's love, which is unrequited. Dewey Dell's sin is also lust, because she had these relations with Leif that resulted in a pregnancy that she does not wish to keep. Jewel's sin is anger, as everything he reacts to in the novel is pretty much out of anger. He's the first one when Darrell burns down the house to tackle him to the ground and say, we need to put him in a mental institution. Now Cash is a little different because pretty much everything Cash does is for his family. The first time we see Cash is when he's making the coffin for Addie, and this continues for the first half of the novel pretty much. The next thing that we can notice about Cash is that he injures his leg pretty much in the start of the trip. And this leg has been cemented, operated on without anesthesia, Cash never once complains about it. He just says, "I'm fine." And he tells everyone not to send him to the doctor or keep him overnight anywhere because he doesn't want to delay the trip to Jefferson any further than it already has. So we see Cash not very displaying many sins. But then, if you want to look a little further, we can look to see when he's unconscious at the riverbed and Dewey Dell asks him what's wrong, and the only thing he mentioned is his tools. He doesn't ask how his family is, what's the situation with Addie's coffin going downstream while Jules chasing after it. He doesn't mention any of that. He just wonders where his hammer and saw is. So we kind of see a little pride in Cash for his tools and his carpentry. Vardaman now is too young. He's 11, and it's not very just to assign a sin to him just yet. So on to stanza 5, which reads, "Well, I got one foot on the platform, the other foot on the train. I'm going back to New Orleans to wear that ball and chain." This just shows the encompassing theme of family interaction as a basis of who you are. It talks about the narrator trying to leave, but held back by the ball and chain to their house of the rising sun. And we can just interpret this again on the Bundren level of all these kids, they don't necessarily want to be there, but they have to be, and it's just inevitable that they're tied down by this family. For example, if we take Jewel, he tried to leave twice in the novel. The first time on a horse when Addie and Anse found out that he bought a horse with his own money and was storing it on the farm. The second time is also on a horse when Anse says that he sold his horse to get some mules. Both times he leaves, and both times he returns. This just shows how inescapable the theme is, and even for the Bundrens. The last stanza is just a repeat of the first stanza. There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy, and God, I know I'm one. So the repeat of the first, which is also the chorus of the song, sandwiches all the verses between it and pretty much reverberates the theme through the whole song. Since we're analyzing a song, it's important not only to analyze the lyrics, but the actual music that the song plays. The first thing that we hear as an audience is an A minor chord. So a minor chord has dissonance, which means that some notes clash. This pretty much represents the Bundrens and how none of them really see eye to eye, and they all perceive each other differently and clash, much like the A minor chord that starts out the entire song. The next thing we want to know when we look at the musical composition is the chord progression. The chord progression contains the A minor chord, and a bunch of other major chords in arpeggios, and this is a riff that plays throughout the entire song. Alright, so this riff plays throughout the entire song. It's cyclic, it just repeats over and over again. We can relate this to the Bundren family. There's 5 kids, and the way that Addie and Anne's parent cycles through each child, they all pretty much end up in ruin and misery like the rest. The next thing we want to talk about is the organ solo, which occurs midway throughout the song. The organ solo is epic and relentless, to say the least. It's fast-paced, and much like their journey to Jefferson, it's unforgiving, and if you listen to it, you can picture the Bundrens going through the river and getting everything poured over in the wagon, and Joel trying to save his mom from the water. The last thing that we want to talk about is the lead singer of the Animals when he sings House of the Rising Sun. He's been said to howl out these lyrics, and this pretty much just speaks to the song and the theme of the novel and all the characters in it, because he howls out this song, relaying the agony and the torment that the Bundrens undergo on their journey to Jefferson. So, this is my analysis. Hope you liked it.